Prairie Yard and Garden is a production of the University of Minnesota Morris in cooperation with Pioneer Public Television. Closed captioning is provided by Mark and Margaret Yankel Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. Shalom Hill Farm, shalomhill.org.
Golf is a game that can be played by all ages from early spring to late fall. A course may have duffers to professionals playing each day, all expecting the turf to be in perfect shape for their game. Join me on Prairie Yard and Garden as we learn what it takes to keep the course in perfect playing condition for you. Many of us homeowners have turf to deal with every summer. And today I've invited Gary Thompson, the owner of the Geneva Golf Course, to talk about it on a much larger scale. And we want to learn a little bit about this particular golf course. How long has it been around?
Larry, this is actually our 12th year of operations. 14 years, I guess, since the inception of Geneva Golf Club. Geneva Golf Club started as an 18-hole golf course and was expanded about 8 years ago to a 27.
And maintaining grass has to be the predominant thing that you wake up to every morning and wonder, is the course ready to play?
Well, what we sell are course conditions. We compete with other golf courses, and so we have to try to be as good as we can be and provide the most pleasant experience that we possibly can.
Well, tell me about the turf that we have here. Is it much different than what a homeowner would experience?
No. Every grass that we have here on the golf course would be closely related genetically to the grasses in your typical yard. We do have creeping bent grass on the greens, which wouldn't be typical for a yard, but everything else is pretty much bluegrass.
And so what kind of steps do you take to maintain this grass? What happens first thing in the spring?
Well, as you know, the grass is dormant all winter, and so we have to wake it up. And the way we do that typically is with a fertilization that's well watered into the soil, and it gets the entire process going as well as a homeowner would do the same thing. The important thing is to get the fertilizer into the soil, be sure it doesn't wash off, just be a steward.
And this is a granular type that's being applied?
Yes, we use granular and liquid, mostly granular, yes.
And when does that process begin?
Typically about May 15th. You know, the ground temperatures have to reach a certain point before there's a nutrient release and the plant comes back from being dormant.
So do we find a lot of disease problems over winter?
You know, snow mold is number one for us, and I think it's probably number one for homeowners as well. And some of the things that we've learned over the years about eliminating snow mold is get the grass as healthy as you can in the fall, and maybe start cutting it a little bit shorter so that it doesn't have the ability to lay over and incubate the molds.
As we then move a little further through the season, we got that fertilizer on in May, and it probably varies a week or two depending upon the season. June, we start getting some heat. We talk about more watering.
Watering is a function of how much we water is a function of ambient temperatures and length of day. So as we move into like June 21st, we're probably starting to reach our peak. Temperatures tend to be a little more severe in July and August, so we have a time frame there from probably the 20th of June to the 20th of August that we irrigate the most.
Do you have to irrigate every day or every other day, or is it, again, I suppose it depends upon the amount of rain?
Yes, that's true. We do try to irrigate a little bit heavier and a little less often. We feel like there are times that we do want to stress the plant a little bit to promote root growth, and so that's kind of our mode. If you water lightly and frequently, you'll end up with roots that are in the top half an inch of soil, and they tend to desiccate out over winter.
Well, and homeowners have that same problem. I've been on some lawns where they said the technician set it up to sprinkle every day, and I said that's wrong.
Yeah, that's true. Especially when you've got a lawn that's a longer cut than what we would have. Our fairways are cut at an inch. Most homeowners, I think, would be at 1.5 inches to 2 inches in their lawn, and I would recommend probably watering every second or third day at a little bit of a higher rate.
Exactly. So what do we move into then after midsummer, and what kind of lawn care and turf care do we have here on the golf course?
Well, that's a prime part of our season, so obviously we want the turf as nicely and well manicured as it can be, but we're already starting to think about winter, and that's the time that we're trying to get our best root growth.
And what do you do at that time to stimulate that root?
Some of it is obviously you need good nutrition, and if you've got soil compaction or any issues like that, early fall is when you want to start to take the compaction out.
And how do you do that?
We have a couple of different machines. We have what's called a dethatching machine. It's a machine that has a series of blades similar to a skill saw. We set that at just a little bit deeper than the thatch, probably 3/4 of an inch. Then we also use a coring machine that actually goes in the ground, takes out a core about 1/2 inch in diameter by about 1.5 inches deep. And we're down into the soil at that point to get water back into the soil.
And you can't leave all that trash on top of the ground.
Different golf courses and different homes or different yards will have different soil types. We have a little bit of a finer soil here. It's a clay soil, and it's a little bit hard to get the cores to actually break up. If you have a sandier yard with irrigation, you're actually more fortunate.
So what do you do in fall preparation to have this lawn and turf in good shape?
July is actually the preparation for fall. There again, we try to get extensive root growth the best that we possibly can. We're trying to hydrate the soil as much as possible for desiccation, because as you know, there are 5 months probably that the root itself isn't getting any water.
Okay.
So it's very important to hydrate the soil.
Well, one of the other things that occurs on golf course that wouldn't occur in a lawn is all these duffer marks and so forth. How do you get the grass to reestablish itself there?
We call them divots. And most of the time what's happening with the divot is that the club goes through the turf. It's clipping off the vegetative part. The roots are still there. We provide sand for the golfers. We ask them to place some sand in the divot. The sand is actually providing shade so that the roots aren't sunburned.
As we get into the end of the season, is there any other special things that have to be done?
We have trees here, so we have to pick up leaves to try to not incubate our snow mold.
What about insects? Do we typically have many insect problems on a turf?
You know, the only insect that we have is probably would be the grub. And we haven't had much of an issue in recent years, but we have treated for grubs with a product called 7.
Well, you know, for most homeowners and farmers, weeds are a major problem. How do you handle those on the golf course?
Well, weeds on a golf course are just like on a lawn, and the best way to avoid an infestation of weeds is to have thick turf. If you have a nice turf canopy, the grass or the weed seed doesn't have a chance to make contact with the soil. And so my recommendation is to have a good, healthy lawn. That's the first way to get rid of weeds. If you do have an infestation, typically they're dandelions, clover, broadleaves, and there are products on the market such as Trimec, dicamba 2,4-D. That's what we use. We do a blanket spraying about Memorial Day. That's when the dandelions like to come out, as you know. And then we go back and do some spot spraying later. If you have clover in your yard, it probably means that you have low fertility. And if you do have that, I would suggest getting a soil sample and find out exactly what you need going forward.
How often do you soil test here?
Once a year. We've been on a pretty good fertility program, and we take samples on 4 or 5 different spots around the golf course, and just do a double check.
I see a lot of green grass here. That must require you to mow consistently.
We do have a lot of grass. I think we have the entire complex is 253 acres with the ponding, and I believe that we mow somewhere about 165 acres. So what we do is we try to use the largest machines possible. We have 2 mowers that are actually 16 feet wide, rotary mowers that mow the roughs. And when I talk about the roughs would be similar to a homeowner's lawn, cut at 1.5 inches or 2 inches.
Okay. Well, can we go take a look at some of that equipment?
Yes, let's do that. This is some of the equipment that we talked about a little bit. Here'd be a greens mower. The greens mowers are the mowers that we actually cut the closest. It's the theoretical cut on this mower is 110 thousandths. It doesn't mean every blade of grass gets cut that short, but it's bent one day or this way, and the next day it's this way, and we cut in different directions, and for the most part we're pretty close to 110 thousandths. This type of mower is a reel mower. We use reel mowers on the fairways, on the greens, and rotary mowers in the roughs. And the idea of the reel mower is that you get kind of a scissor cutting action, and you don't get the browning of the leaf tip. So the greens mower, again, is used on the greens, 110 thousandths cut. We have to sharpen these about once a week so we don't get any brown out on the tips of the leaves.
Is that a tedious process?
Actually, we back lap them. That's kind of a shortcut, and then we do a grind where we actually take them off, put them on a machine that we have here, and new bed knives. And so it's a costly process, but if you want nice greens, that's what you have to do.
Do you change the height of the grass on the green as the season progresses, or is it always exactly the same?
In the spring, typically, we leave them a little longer because we're not getting the growth. We want a little more leaf tissue exposed to the sun to build the roots. So, and then in the fall, a little bit to that degree too. So moving on, this is a fairway mower. Same principle. We've got a rotary or a reel type of cut, the scissors cut again. These are set like at 5/8, theoretical cut. They get sharpened about every 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Here's a machine here that is a dual-purpose machine. It's actually, we have a brush on it that my son uses in his business. But today we've got the leaf picker on. We're picking leaves. The leaves have to be picked in the fall so that the grass doesn't get smothered out with the leaves over winter. So that's an ongoing process as the leaves fall.
Oh, it could be a real headache in the fall when you got, well, every golf course has got lots of trees.
Well, that's right. And playability, I mean, it's a little bit about playability too. You lose your ball in the leaves, it's not much fun. So
exactly. So you get a volume of leaves coming off. Where do you dispose of those? That becomes an issue, I would suspect.
We do. We kind of compost them and then use them for different things, mix them in with dirt maybe, and it's basically a compost.
Gary, I'm interested in these machines. I'd like to see them work. Can we put one of them out there and let them go?
Well, let's have one of our operators operate the greens mower for you. Dale's cutting in a different direction than he did yesterday. As I talked about before, the theoretical cut is 110 thousandths, but by going a different direction, if the grass happens to lean one way one day and then we pick it up the next day and that sort of thing. Our operator Dale is a very experienced guy. He's been with us for 13 years, so Actually, that's as long as the course has been here.
Really?
Yes. Now those little clippings that he's getting are probably, less than 1/10 of an inch.
Well, at this time of year, we're coming into fall, with the grass is probably not growing quite as much as it would in May or June.
Absolutely. It's probably growing on a normal fall day in September. It's probably growing at half the rate that it would, say, in June.
Yeah. So what's this machine called, Gary?
This is a fairway mower. This is a real cut mower again. This mower would operate typically in the fairway about every second day in the growing season, the extreme growing season, spring and fall, about every 3 days.
Now I noticed that this doesn't carry a basket with it. Is that true all season?
That's a fact. We actually put the clippings back down as a source of fertilizer.
And how long does it take you to mow all the fairways? We got 27 fairways on this course.
Yeah, we have about 40 acres that are cut at anywhere from 1/2 to 5/8 inch. And so we have 5 mowers, I guess, that we go out so that we can get a good playing surface ahead of the golfers. So.
40 acres sounds like an awful lot of grass to cut.
Yeah, it is.
4 or 5 times a week.
We're doing it 8 feet at a time, so yes.
That makes a difference. How long would a mower like this last? Do you run them for a couple years and then replace, or try to get more years than that?
We try to get more years than that. If they're well maintained, these mowers are good for 10 years. The normal wear that you would have on the reels would probably have to be replaced about every 3 years.
Does it, I noticed that the grass is a little on the damp side today. Does that make a difference in your cutting process?
It does. We don't like to come out when it's real damp because you can get some clumping, and that's not aesthetically pleasing.
Well, Gary, tell me about this little operation.
What we're doing here, Larry, is we're picking up these leaves that could cause a potential disease problem in the spring. The leaves would help attribute to snow mold issues. So just as a precautionary measure, we pick them up. And as you can see, the drifts of leaves that come with the wind would tend to harm the turf more than just a sporadic amount of leaves. So,
well, my experience, it hides a ball.
Well, it does. You're absolutely right. We do this for playability in the golf course in the fall as well.
And I assume you got to do it over about a 2-week period. Takes that long to get all the leaves down, or the majority of them down?
Yeah, it kind of has to do with how hard that first frost is, whether it's a killing frost. They tend to come all down more at once, but this year we haven't had that killer yet, so we'll be going over the course many times to clean up the mess.
Well, I would suspect that creates a huge fuel bill. Running this equipment, a lot of gas is used.
Well,
or diesel.
You're right, and most of the mowers and equipment are diesels today. They're more efficient than the gas machines. And you're right, operating a golf course is more expensive every year, and I think prices go up for everyone, and they do for us as well.
Well, this would probably be not much different than a homeowner's unit, only it's larger scale.
Yeah, I would say that's true. The blades, we have rotary blades that have a mulching action, so as he's filling the hopper, we can get a little more in there than just a leaf. But we could actually probably compost some of these and put them right back into the ground, and we do that occasionally too.
I have a question. I have copper-colored beetles on my roses. What are they?
These are Japanese beetles, and they were first introduced into the United States in 1916, first found in Minnesota in 1968, but in the last 10 years they have really reproduced and they have become quite prolific in certain areas. The Japanese beetle is a big problem because the beetles will eat your roses and your lindens and your grapes, and the larvae of them, they are white grubs and they will eat your turf grass. So in early July, the beetles emerge and they feast on many different horticultural plants, up to 300 different types of plants. They'll eat and then they'll fly back and lay their eggs into turf grass. The grubs start chewing on your grass, and so they get you both ways. There's several things that you can do. What we recommend is to start out with using a little trap like this, and this is just a Coke bottle cut off, turned upside down with just soapy water in it. And when they first arrive, just tap the bush and knock them into there and they'll drown. And if you don't have too many of them, this is a good way to get started. They think what happens is that the first ones send out pheromones and they recruit more beetles. So if you can catch some of the early ones this way, you can reduce your numbers. A lot of people would like to use the stronger pheromone traps. We do not recommend it because you'll catch a lot of surplus beetles. It'll draw in more than you would normally have. If you have really, really high numbers, then there are insecticides. Be very careful with the insecticides. Remember that some of the insecticides can cause trouble with honeybees. So if you use a contact insecticide, you should apply it early in the morning. The grubs are going to start growing in August, and you need to really treat them when they're small. But make sure that you have grubs in your lawn before you treat them. There's a lot of other things that can cause brown spots. The grubs will eat the roots of your turf, so when you grab the turf, it comes right up. And then look in there, dig around, and you'll see the small grubs in August. If you have at least 10 per square foot or more, you could treat. And at the garden store, there are a couple different products that they sell that work pretty good. You just apply them through your fertilizer spreader, and that's a good way to control the grubs.
Ask the Arboretum Experts has been brought to you by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum in Chanhassen, dedicated to enriching lives through the appreciation and knowledge of plants.
Well, Gary, what was this place before it became a golf course?
Well, this was actually an old dairy farm that had been, the dairy buildings had been abandoned, and it was then became a crop farm. And we in conjunction with another developer purchased the property and developed an 18-hole golf course originally to enhance the development, the housing project.
Well, Gary, what are the steps you take from going from a cropland to creating a green turf?
First of all, you want to shape the earth so that it doesn't penalize a golfer. In other words, it has to be something that challenges a golfer. And so when you build fairways, you can't have fairways that would slope the wrong way in relationship to a green. And we engaged an architect out of Minneapolis to actually lay this entire project out, and then we reshaped the ground. Reshaping of the ground is actually the most difficult part, and that's the part you have to get right. The topsoil needs to be removed, stored. Then we have a clay subsoil that is shaped to the features that you want in the golf course. Then the topsoil needs to be replaced, and I call it buffing it out, getting it smooth, and then at that point you seed the golf course.
And do you go through a unique process in making sure that the greens will absorb water quickly and dissipate that water?
Well, today the modern golf courses that are designed have what's called a California type green, which is a sand-based green. The thought behind that is that the plants and the roots will never sit in water. And so the construction of the greens involves putting actually drain tile below the sand at about 14 inches. And the sand is imported and mixed with peat at a rate of about 15 to 20% peat. The peat is designed to hold moisture and also hold fertility, just to a point.
Yeah, we certainly don't want root rot.
No, exactly.
And there's a different type of grass on the green than the fairways?
Yeah, typically at this latitude, this climate, you'll find bent grass exclusively. Bent grass is one of the finest grasses that there are. It's quite disease tolerant. The newer varieties are quite disease tolerant. And at our latitude here, the northern latitudes that we have, some of the nicest, finest putting surfaces in the world are right here.
Well, that's good to know.
Yes.
It hasn't helped my game any, but know that we got good
I think
grass.
you need to play a little more.
I see, I see. That's probably true. Well, what about renovating? I'm sure there's areas that die out over the winter or disease comes in the middle of summer. What's the process involved in renovating grass?
Well, there are different ways. You can sod, you can slit seed, or you can, if you have a thin stand, you can just try to fertilize and water it back into a denser population. We don't have a lot of problem with that. This year we experienced something. We had, through July, we experienced between 16 and 17 inches of rain, and some of the ponding on the golf course overflowed, and we were actually shut down for 5 days and lost some turf because of that.
And so now the fall is when you're reestablishing those areas?
Yes, we imported dirt and reseeded, as you can see over here.
Now you use the term imported. You're not bringing it from England or
No.
Mexico. It's
I guess it's just a term. It's coming from offsite. We have to actually buy black dirt these days because we've used everything that we have.
Is there anything unique about that black dirt? Is it just good topsoil somewhere else?
Yes,
available?
it's just good topsoil that we can find here locally.
Well, Gary, I want to thank you for explaining the operations on maintaining turf on a golf course. It was very interesting.
Well, Larry, actually, it's been fun, and hopefully some of the things and practices that we're using here will be beneficial to some of your viewers and in taking care of their lawns.
Closed captioning is provided by Mark and Margaret Yackel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. Shalom Hill Farm, shalomhill.org.